Hi, I'm Dr. Kevin Mailo, and you're listening to the Physician Empowerment Podcast. At Physician Empowerment, we're focused on transforming the lives of Canadian physicians through education and finance, practice transformation, wellness, and leadership. After you've listened to today's episode, I encourage you to visit us at phys-empowerment.ca, that's PHYS, empowerment.ca, to learn more about the many resources we have to help you make that change in your own life, practice, and personal finances. Now on to today's episode. Hi, everyone. Back again with another outstanding episode. I'm really looking forward to digging down into this topic. And joining me today is someone who's already been on the show, and we hope to keep having her come back, is Jayna Amadasun. And Jayna comes from a very diverse medical background, having had different roles in the healthcare system, is trained as an MD, but also now has a background in medical law and is an ethicist and founder of Ember Impact Global, which is a consulting and coaching firm for physicians. And I know you primarily service Canadian physicians, but there are, of course, so many of us out there that need this kind of guidance and help that you do, Jayna. So really glad to have you on the show. Maybe say a quick hi to everybody.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here again. Thank you, Kevin, for having me. We always have the pre-show, the pre-party.
Yeah, exactly. We always have the pre-show. We always catch up a little bit first. And so, but let's get into today's topic.
Yeah.
And I'm going to explain it a little bit because I know a lot of our listenership is now international, and we're coming at you from Canada. And one Canadian province equivalent to a state, one of our major ones, I think it's our second biggest province, the provincial government there introduced Bill 83. And I'm going to read the name of it because it's one of those almost dystopian kind of doublespeak, self-contradicting titles. But it's Bill 83, which is an act to foster the practice of medicine in the public health and social services network. And essentially, this was introduced, I believe, late last year, late 2024, in the provincial legislature with a lot of cross-party support, but is essentially a bill that will fine Quebec doctors $200,000 a day, not a one-time fee, not a year, but $200,000 a day if they are not working in the public healthcare system. Because in Quebec, there is a public healthcare system and there is a private healthcare system. And over the last several years, more and more Quebec-trained doctors are actually leaving the public system and beginning to work privately. And we're going to discuss why that's occurring a little bit later in the show. But I want to share this hot topic with you because it highlights what we feel is essentially legislative abuse of physicians. Because for physicians that, for whatever reason, cannot work in the public healthcare system, they're facing personal bankruptcy. They're being forced to work in a geographic place that may not fit with them for family or personal or religious reasons or whatever have you. So with that being said, Jayna, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the dysfunction in the bill itself?
Thank you, Kevin. And one thing I just want us to clarify, so I'm going to quote, this is a CTV news article that came out on December 4th, 2024. And it started to talk about the bill being tabled. And so the fines range from $20,000 to $100,000 per act per day, up to $200,000. Now, that's a lot of money for a physician. And what does the bill actually, what are they looking for in this bill? The bill is looking to retain more physicians within the Quebec healthcare system. And so if you've gone through the system and Quebec has been a part of your process, you went to school, you did your residency, then you become I don't know, I'm using this word loosely, an indentured servant, because you have to pay back. or some people in the 21st century, we like to say return on investment, right? So the Quebec government says, I've invested in you, and because I've done that, you have to work for me in order for me to get value from me training you. Now, that's not something that's outside of other provinces in Canada. That's not something that's outside of other countries. There are lots of countries that says, okay, I've trained you, I've sent you to medical school, I've made residency possible for you, and I'm hiring you, and I want you to stay back and work for me because this was an investment and we have this shared relationship. But what Bill 83 does is it's capping you to a 5-year period. And you have to be working for the province for 5 years. That's what you owe them. And if you don't work for them, now you're going to pay them this absorbent amount of money. First of all, it really goes against one thing, the Charter of Rights, which is very important here in Canada. Any Canadian citizen, any Canadian permanent resident has the right to pursue gainful employment and have a gainful livelihood in any aspect of the province. The Charter of Rights gives each Canadian the right to move. That is embedded in our Charter of Rights. So if I want to, that means I have to be restricted to being here for 5 years. What happens if family dynamics change? I need to move for family reasons, for health reasons. Then I'm stuck, and I now have to pay them this amount of money if I violate that. And I think that is questionable. We talked about a little bit at the beginning. Is this bullying? Are physicians being bullied and forced? Even the article uses the word force. So this is not something where the doctor has a choice. You are compelled to sign this document and you're going to work for me for 5 years, whether you like it or not. And it doesn't matter whether things go sour after a year, and you're compelled to stay there for 5 years. And I think that is wrong.
Absolutely. And, again, to go back to the title, an act to foster the practice of medicine in the public health and social services network. And there's no fostering here whatsoever. It's the opposite. I think this is going to lead to a massive brain drain from Quebec with any up and coming talent or anybody that has the opportunity to bail now.
I agree with you. What I foresee, like you, is the first thing persons are going to be mindful of, not whether I'm getting a great education, not whether this is a great residency program. It's like, I am going to get stuck here. And if I don't, the society we live in today is always looking for an escape route. And they want out as quickly as possible, as soon as possible, when things are not conducive to what they want it to be. And so the first thing I'm going to think is 5 years. But what if I hate it after the first year? What if the work, we're going to talk about this a little bit. What if the work environment is really hostile? What if there are poor policies in the institution? What is the process? What happens if there are things that create an uneasiness for me that doesn't allow me to sacrifice my physical and mental health for 5 years.
And yeah, and yeah, we're gonna jump to this towards the end, but like how many hours should we be working over that 5 years? I don't know, that I didn't read the bill, but I'm curious, like, is it 1 day a week? What about maternity or paternity leave? Young parents get their indentured servitude extended, right? There are just so many things wrong with this. It's not even funny, right? On very practical terms.
Yes. And so we have to ask ourselves, why the coercion? Is there a reason that the lawmakers have been unable to come together reasonably with the physicians that work within Quebec and find out? Because I this is a reactive response to a current problem. And so, is it that people are just leaving? They don't want to be there. So, you have to ask yourself why. And so, my conversation would start with why. Why do you have to force and not work collaboratively in order to come up with the best plan that serves the province, that serves the doctors, and that ultimately serves and benefits the patients? This bill will have such negative connotations attached that the only persons that will really suffer at the end of this bill, if it's passed into law, are the patients. Because if you're reducing the amount of physicians available, who's going to pay the price for it? It's your patients. They won't have the support that they need when they need it, and to the level and the quality that they need it. And so I this is a an interesting one.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And they talk about the cost to train a medical doctor, right? In certain surgical subspecialties, medical subspecialties, that cost can run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars from medical school to the end of residency and fellowship training. And they talk about that like that's a very big number. What they don't talk about is how many hospitals run on the near free labor of residents. I'm sure many residents who are salaried, for anybody in the lay public listening in Canada, residents are salaried and are working 100, 120 hours a week. That hourly wage is abysmal. Like less than entry level unskilled positions in the private sector, right? And so you sit there, having let's say a neurosurgical resident cutting open a skull, working on a brain, an ophthalmology resident opening up an eyeball, and these very vivid descriptions that I'm using to highlight how like critical this work is, and is done for near free. The taxpayer is getting near free, because if you had to hire fully trained doctors to do all of a resident's work, then our healthcare system would be far more expensive, especially in acute care facilities.
It would collapse. It
It
would
would
be
collapse.
unsustainable. It would be unsustainable.
So this is wrong. It's wrong, is what it is. And it's shifting the blame to a group that is not responsible for the dysfunction in the healthcare system.
I like something that you said. So let's look back at the hospital and this free labor, and I'm doing air quotes here. So you have free labor, and we know that residents do not make any money. The money is not made during residency. Do you think that should be an incentive for the province, what if the residents say, oh no, there's no way I'm going to accept 16, $18 an hour. I'm a resident. I'm already a doctor. So I'm already a doctor and I'm going through this residency. What if I tell the province, okay, if that's how you want to be, so for those 5 years and for the time that I'm doing my residency, you're going to pay me $75 an
Yeah,
hour
a
or
living
$100 an hour.
wage to reflect the
Uh-huh.
liability and the expertise I bring.
Exactly. So, can that type of compensation be used as a leverage for these physicians saying, okay, if you want to bring this bill, let's revisit what you pay me and what I make in residency? Because
Yeah,
I'm already a trained professional and I'm going through this training to get to be more skilled in an area. I'm already doing the work, so it's not that I'm in there and I'm not doing the work. I'm
no,
doing the work. I'm seeing your patients. I'm taking care of it. So let's change my hourly wage and see how that works. So, I think that can be a great leveraging tool for residents, for physicians.
yeah, and recognizing that the Canadian education system pays for many other types of professionals, subsidizes them.
Yeah,
Lawyers, accountants, nurses, physiotherapists, the list goes on in our healthcare system. And yet, physicians are the sole group targeted. And I
yeah.
believe they're targeted because they're not unionized.
They're not unionized. Right.
It's an easy target. And I've listened to this, and I think maybe you can probably hear a little bit of frustration coming out of my voice, but I remember being in medical school in the early 2000s, listening to politicians disparage doctors and how well paid they are and how they're overpaid and underworked. And now, like, I just like, like having met many physicians through physician empowerment, I just roll my eyes at that assertion
Yes.
because physicians are grossly underpaid in Canada, the vast majority of specialties, especially family practice. And this speaks, and you touched on this, Jayna, knowing one's worth.
Yeah.
Knowing one's worth from the day one of residency all the
Yes.
way to retirement, knowing one's worth and being able to advocate for it.
Yes. You know, when when I'm thinking about this 5 years, that how who decided that it would be 5 years? Was there a consultation with physicians to say, okay, yeah, we're good. We can hang out here for 5 years. You have an amazing healthcare system. Everything is in place. We're so happy with you. We love being here with you for five
Make it
years.
10.
I was about to say, in fact, it's so great. I'm going to stay. And so, how did we arrive at year 5? That that's a
It feels
question
like a number out of a hat. It feels like something you can tell the public.
and the public is saying, yes, they should be. My tax dollars have trained them. The thing that you mentioned, and I don't think people understand, doctors have loans that drive them through medical school. So when you're going through, even though they're saying they're subsidized, and that's where again, I this is a little play on, this is a little bit of semantics, right? So you're subsidizing my education and work, but you're underpaying me to be a
And I've
resident,
got $250,000 worth of
and
loans.
I'm coming out and I have loans, and I think they're looking at this number up to $200,000 because they're still paying off student loans. And it's likely that they'll say, you know what, I can't risk this being given to the provincial government if I decide to leave because I still have loans to pay. And I also have a family that I'm trying to raise. I'm a new spouse, I'm a new parent because residency, we I think we did our calculations last time, anywhere from 6 to 12 years, somewhere thereabouts. You can be go through that medical school process, get into residence. Shortest residency is 2 years. Longest residency, I think it's about 10 years. And so,
Yeah.
and so when you look at the gamut, and if you're still in residency and you're not being paid a full salary, then I think they feel this is a deterrent for you to leave. But I can't wait for us to get into this topic of why are they leaving in the first.
Yeah, so let's get there. Let's talk about the one question nobody asked at all. And I listened to politicians in Quebec across the political spectrum, all singing praises about this bill. But go ahead and tell us the one question nobody's really discussing.
So I want to know personally why. Why would a physician in Quebec or in any situation, whether in Canada or globally, if you are working in an environment, what is that thing that will cause you to leave your work environment to say, you know what, enough is enough. I can't do this another day. I am out of here. For me, that I don't think our governments, our healthcare system, our administrators are dealing with the root cause of why we are not retaining physicians. Our last conversation, we talked a lot about burnout. And it was interesting. I found an article talked about 7 reasons doctors are leaving medicine. And this can apply to leaving the province or leaving the country. Why are they so discontented in a space that you have to literally strong arm them to stay within your province and within your health system, because that's what this bill is doing. It's strong arming them and telling them, I don't care if you fall apart, I don't care if you burn out. This article says more than half of doctors who did this survey said that they are burnt out. That's more than 53%. So if you have all of this, then it talks about insufficient income. It talks about increased verbal abuse and bullying, whether it's by patients or whether it's by senior staff. What is the thing that's causing your doctors to leave that you are not addressing? And that's where I think you will find the answer. And if you solve that, you will not have to go to Bill 83.
Fix the working conditions. People go into medicine. We all, the vast majority of us went in because we want to do good for society, help our patients, serve our communities, and have meaningful, rewarding work in that process. When those things are taken away, when that meaningful, rewarding work is taken away, and we're left with an abusive healthcare system with terrible working conditions, of course people want to leave. Nurses do it. I think over 50% of nursing graduates quit and leave the profession before their 35th birthday. Right?
That's a high percentage.
And it's because of the abuse they face. And physicians face the same. It's just the problem is there's so much sunk cost that goes into becoming a doctor. You know, you put 10, 12 years of your life into it. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to contemplate dropping it and opening a Starbucks or whatever have you. But I have known physicians who have done it, who have walked away because they're just tired. So why don't, this is where the effort should be, is fixing the dysfunctional system. I mean, any jurisdiction that is going to treat doctors and nurses well, that's going to ensure they have safe patient loads and the resources they need to do their job safely and effectively, is going to attract graduates.
Exactly.
It's going to attract graduates.
It exactly will. And that's the conversation that the policymakers, the lawmakers should be having, and they should be having it with the physician. You cannot go in consultation without consulting the people that are intimately affected by the decisions that you are making, and expect, even if you talk to maybe a representative group, you need to have a town hall. You need to have everybody there lending their voices, because if a, and I'm going to say this nicely, if you have a physician who is in a leadership role, who has wants to aspire into maybe some political position or some higher position, I'm not saying that they don't have the capacity to be fair, but it's hard for them to speak for the average physician and on behalf of the average physician who is in the trenches doing the work. It's very difficult because you're aspiring to something. And so your loyalty may be towards the political arena. And I'm sorry that, like, people don't like to acknowledge truth, right? If that's your goal and that's what you want, that's what you're aligning yourself with. And so you feel this is the best deal. And I'm sure physicians are like, who said this? Who did this? When did we have a voice in this? Like, I would never agree to 5 years. Like, who made that decision for me? And so we have to really take this and put on another set of lens. We have to look at this from the health, from the wellness of the physician.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
I, I this is my thing, and this is why I really love going into medical law and ethics. And I love patients. Everybody knows when I did clinical practice, my patients they were everything to me. They were the driving force. But as I grew in the profession, I started to see that the scales of justice were very unbalanced in terms of physician and healthcare workers, because the patients kind of went all the way up to the top. But you have to rebalance those scales, because your patients are important, but your healthcare staff is equally important.
Well, it starts with the health of the healthcare staff.
Treat me well, and I'll treat my patients well, and the patients will
It's a
benefit.
natural
Yes,
outcome. It's no different than the private sector where, people who work in
yes,
construction or other industries, they cannot build anything until safety is addressed
yes,
first.
yes,
And in healthcare, it's more complex because it's emotional
yes,
safety, it's physical safety, it's sleep deprivation, it's so many things. And yeah, those are tough conversations. Like you said, people don't want to hear the
yeah.
truth.
But we have to talk about it because our healthcare system is still tinkering on the fence. It's really in a horrific place. And now we have the burden of looming tariffs, because we need to talk about how this affects healthcare. People will now be more stressed out because of the economic burdens
Oh,
that will
without question.
now put an enormous amount of strain on the healthcare system, because we now have people that are sicker. This is not a time to play around with losing one doctor from your province, from your healthcare system. You can't do it. You don't have the luxury of having healthcare workers walk away. And so if you create this bill, and they're looking at this and they're thinking, no way am I going to lock myself into this thing, because it feels like I'm going into a trap. Because that can be an,
Yeah,
that can be like
it feels like
like
it feels like visiting Berlin after they started building the
like
wall.
what are you?
Do I really want to stay
Like,
here?
what am I gonna do in here? If,
Yeah. God forbid my
why are
spouse
you
can't
locking
find
me in
work.
5 years? Like, what's wrong with the place? And
Yeah.
we're like that as human beings, right? And
Well,
there may be nothing wrong,
you just,
but I
yeah, we're
anticipate
evolutionarily, we're supposed to be able to smell a trap. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a saber-toothed tiger,
like
lurking above me on the
exactly.
ridge, you know? And so you naturally wonder
And that's what
what's
five
going
years is
on.
saying to me. It's saying to me that like all of the red flags are coming up.
Yeah, like it's like
It's just
alarm,
like I'm
alarm.
gonna run away in the opposite direction. And Quebec can't afford to do that because their
No.
healthcare system is ready to combust, right? And it's
Yeah.
been like that for a really long time. And so let's on a very, very serious note, we have to bring physicians to the table. We have to bring them in the center, if only for a moment, to hear, to understand, to empathize, to be able to reason together. There's this thing that says, come, let us reason together. We have to be able to reason together. And when I am happy and I am fulfilled, your system will thrive, your system will flourish. You talked about private versus public. And this is something that I can't understand in my mind. The private sector will go all out to make sure that that employee is operating at their maximum. They're giving them all of the resources because they've learned something. If this person is happy, they are productive. That means I am not losing money.
And they stay.
And then they invite people to come. You have to come and work for my
Yes.
company because this is the greatest place. Like I am living the dream. And that's you have to create that. And that can be created within a government or a public healthcare system. There's no way that anyone in this 21st century that we are in should be downtrodden, burdened, overwhelmed, feeling inadequate.
Dreading going to work. I talk to doctors who dread going to work because of the system. It's
The Sunday
broken.
Sunday syndrome, Sunday night
Yeah.
syndrome.
So let's just zoom out a little bit, right? Because this is not about
No,
Quebec. It's an
no,
illustration. It's an extreme
yes,
development. And I do use that word extreme because that's
yes,
what it is. It's an extreme development. And I think physicians globally need to see this for what it is. It's abuse. It's abuse of doctors who are an easy target. And I think it's important for us collectively as a profession to know our worth. Change can only start when we know our worth to society, to ourselves as individuals, to what we owe our families, right? Because I don't think our families deserve to have us coming home exhausted, irritable, and burnt out because of bad working
yes.
conditions.
I I agree.
And then from there, we need to find our voice,
Mm.
and to speak up and fight and advocate and realize that in that advocacy, things will improve for the healthcare system and ultimately our patients.
Yes,
This is not a zero-sum game.
yes,
It is not.
yes. I agree with you. I agree wholeheartedly. Finding it's important for everyone, doctors included. It doesn't matter how much you think you're paying them. They have a right to be heard. They have a right because they have a right not to be discriminated against. Because now we have to be careful that we're discriminating against this group of professionals. And just because they're professionals doesn't make them less of human beings. They're still human beings and they're still in a position where they can suffer harm. And if they are able to suffer harm through these policies and processes that occur, then you have to fix that. You have to be able to hear them. You have to be able to understand and not think that, oh, well, I'm paying you a lot of money. Get over it. Like, no, you're paying them a
No, I'm
lot of
sorry. The
money.
golden cage model, the golden cage model does not work.
Yes. Yeah, and the money, what some of them will do is they would walk away from the money in order to
Yep.
have peace of mind. And I'm looking at this in front of me, and it's talking about those long hours. And I don't think people understand the amount of work and the amount of hours weekly a physician will do. And this says the average doctor works 53.4 hours per week. And then if you look at it in a system that's short staff, you now you're almost working 80 hours a week. So you're doing two shifts. I mean, two people's work in a week. And the average person in the community does 36 hours, especially here locally, does 36, 37 hours a week. They have some time off here and there, but doctors have to work until they can take. They don't have, as far as I know, do they have EDOs? I don't know doctors to have EDOs. Do you have EDOs at work? Those earned days
What's
off.
an EDO? Oh, obviously not. Obviously not, given that I've never heard that acronym.
Earned days off. So, you're banking time.
Yeah, then
That's
there's
the
nothing getting
that
banked.
doesn't even apply. And so I think the way we look at physicians within the workplace has to change. We can't compare them to the regular community because they're not doing the regular work in the community. This is why it's specialized. You can't. I know they want all things to be equal, and we're going to treat them just like we treat this group or this group, but you can't. There has to be some leeway that allows you to look at them through a very specialized lens that's going to help to promote them and keep them healthy, keep them mentally strong, and keep them wanting to work many, many years to come. Our baby boomers are dying. Our Gen Zs and our Gen X, they want to retire at 45. So I don't know what's going to happen the rest of the way.
Well, and they want more mobility. All the new grads I talk to want flexibility and mobility, which is great. That works in absolutely the opposite direction with Bill 83. Like couldn't have gotten the timing worse.
Exactly. And so again, as healthcare officials, administrators, as policy workers, refocus your attention, remove some of the tension that you may have, remove your biases that you have towards physicians, especially if you think that they're making too much money, they can handle it. No, they're still human beings, and we have to emphasize that these are human beings. They have families, they have responsibilities. Some of them also face physical illnesses, whether they're invisible disabilities or invisible or visible disabilities. These are people just like in your society, and you're while you're holding them to this much greater level of responsibility, and they need to be quiet, they can't express themselves. It's wrong. It's wrong. And that's where the bullying comes in, when you're coercing and you're forcing and you're telling them you're going to do this or else. And that's what Bill 83 says. And that's what happens even in other areas globally where governments are passing these laws that don't take into effect the long-term effects of what will happen if physicians look at this and say, I don't even want to go into medicine because I see that coming and I don't want any part of that. I want freedom and flexibility to do what I want to do. And this doesn't align with my values. I'm out of here. And then what happens to us? This healthcare, AI will never be an option in healthcare. This is a human to human interaction and profession to people. I don't care how much AI you have, it's not, you need your physicians on the ground and you need them to be healthy you need them to be strong.
It's a human system.
Yes.
As much as we try to deny that. Jayna, I am so grateful to have had you on the show. I felt like this is, the kind of conversations we need to start having as a profession. Like you can feel the temperature rising across jurisdictions all over, and it's important we start seeing it as a trend of what's happening to doctors and start to address it. So again, thank you so much for coming on the show. We can't wait to have you again. This was just outstanding. So again, Jayna's this, comes from a phenomenal background in healthcare, now works, in medical law and ethics. You've got a consultancy firm where you help build better healthcare systems on these kinds of values of openness, dialogue, and respect. Thank you so much.
And equity, gotta have equity and fairness in there. Very important.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I'm really happy to be here today. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for listening to the Physician Empowerment Podcast. If you're ready to take those next steps in transforming your practice, finances, or personal well-being, then come and join us at phys-empowerment.ca, PHYS empowerment.ca, to learn more about how we can help. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd really appreciate it if you would share our podcast with a colleague or friend, and head over to Apple Podcasts to give us a 5-star rating and review. If you've got feedback, questions, or suggestions for future episode topics, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to join us and be interviewed and share some of your story, we'd absolutely love that as well. Please send me an email at kmilo@phys-empowerment.ca. Thank you again for listening. Bye.